I stood in the back of the ballroom while Andrew Briggs praised my work for exactly 40 seconds before erasing me in the next breath. Amelia Warren has done exceptional technical work this past year, he said, champagne flute raised toward the crystal chandeliers. But as we move into our next phase, Crestmont Solutions needs visionary leadership. So effective immediately, my son Dylan will be assuming Amelia's responsibilities as Chief Operations Officer. The applause was mechanical. Polite. A few people glanced my way, then quickly found something else to look at, like acknowledging what just happened might make them complicit. Dylan stood beside his father in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, nodding with practiced humility, as if he'd earned this moment through anything other than biology. I remained near the service entrance with the people who actually knew how this company functioned. The logistics team, senior analysts, client coordinators who remembered every account detail without needing to check their notes. Behind Andrew, the projector displayed a slide I'd designed myself. From revenue crisis to record growth, the Crestmont turnaround. My systems. My process maps. My 18-hour days. My name was nowhere on that slide. Andrew continued his speech with the smooth confidence of someone who'd never had to prove himself. Success doesn't come from one individual working in isolation. It comes from a unified vision executed by people who understand where this company needs to go. Dylan represents that future. Dylan shook his father's hand. Photographers captured the moment. The applause grew louder because that's what people do when power changes hands in public, regardless of whether it makes sense. By the time the crowd started drifting toward the open bar, I'd already made my decision. I walked directly to Andrew's office while everyone else celebrated. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was headed. Their attention remained fixed on Dylan on the stage, on the carefully curated story they'd just been sold. Andrew was alone when I entered, jacket draped over his chair, tie loosened, leaning back like a general who'd just won a difficult campaign. "Amelia," he said with something close to warmth. "What did you think of the announcement?" I closed the door. The click echoed in the sudden quiet. "You told me results mattered here," I said. "You've seen the numbers. You know exactly who rebuilt this company." He studied me for a moment, then smiled. Not apologetically. Not even uncomfortably. Just enough to make his position clear. "I know precisely what you accomplished," he replied. "You handled the operational side. Very competently, I should add. But leadership requires something different. Vision. Presence. The ability to inspire confidence in rooms where technical details don't matter. You promised that if I turned this place around, my position would be secure. And it is," he said smoothly. "You be taken care of. We're not ungrateful." He opened his desk drawer, pulled out his wallet, and thumbed through several bills before selecting one. He slid it across the polished wood toward me without standing. A single $100 note. "This," he said, tapping it once with his index finger, "represents what your contribution is actually worth to this organization. Take it. Be grateful we're acknowledging you at all." For several seconds, the only sound was the low hum of the air conditioning and muted laughter from the party downstairs. I looked at the bill. Clean. Worth less than the parking fees I'd accumulated working weekends to save his company from bankruptcy. I looked at him again. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing anger. I picked up the 100 slowly, folded it once, and placed it in my wallet. "Thank you," I said quietly. He looked almost disappointed. That's it. I turned and walked out of his office, through the corridor and out of the building. No dramatics. No confrontation. No emotional scene for the remaining staff to gossip about. He thought that meant he'd won. That I'd accepted his assessment of my worth and would disappear quietly into the background. What he didn't understand was that I hadn't left empty-handed. What he didn't realize was that overnight, Crestmont Solutions would shift from owning my operational framework to desperately needing it, and access had just been revoked. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. If you enjoy stories where competent professionals get dismissed by arrogant executives, where nepotism meets reality, and where one insulting $100 bill becomes the most expensive mistake a CEO ever made, hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to hear exactly what happened the next morning when they arrived at work and discovered that replaceable wasn't quite the word they thought it was. My name is Amelia Warren. I'm 38 years old, and until 3 days ago, I was the person you called at Crestmont Solutions when something critical needed fixing immediately. Crestmont started as a mid-sized supply chain consulting firm. Then it expanded too aggressively, chased contracts it couldn't properly service, and woke up one fiscal year to discover it was functionally insolvent. Revenue hemorrhaging, clients threatening legal action, internal processes held together with outdated software and manual workarounds that no one had documented properly. When I arrived 14 months ago, Crestmont wasn't just struggling. It was collapsing in slow motion. Time, credibility, client trust, all depleted. The only reason some contracts remained active was because terminating them would have been more expensive than enduring the dysfunction. I didn't get a corner office when I joined. I got a cubicle near the freight elevator and a directive that sounded straightforward but was essentially impossible. Stop the crisis, Andrew said during our first meeting. Then fix it permanently. We met in his executive suite overlooking the harbor. He slid a folder across his desk. Financial projections, client complaint logs, operational efficiency reports that read like disaster assessments. We have maybe 6 weeks, he said. Not months. Weeks. I reviewed the documents. Legacy clients filing formal complaints. Penalty clauses being triggered by repeated failures. Systems cobbled together by people who'd long since left the company. This isn't just inefficient, I said. One major failure could trigger a cascade. You could lose your 3 largest accounts simultaneously. He leaned back, evaluating me the way someone evaluates a potential investment. That's why you're here, Amelia. Fix it. I'm not a miracle worker, I replied. I'm a systems architect. There's a significant difference. You'll have whatever resources you need, he said quickly. Your title will be Chief Operations Officer. You'll report directly to me. I waited. And authority? I asked. Complete operational control, he said. Then added almost casually, within reasonable boundaries. That phrase, reasonable boundaries, should have been a warning sign. I ignored it because I needed the position more than I needed perfect conditions. A senior executive cleared his throat from across the room. Just so we're aligned, Amelia, the board is extremely nervous right now. Any disruption could trigger investor concerns. I looked at him directly. The disruption already happened. You're just living in the aftermath. Silence. The kind that either ends a career or establishes authority. Andrew broke it. Fix the system, he said, voice steady again. Do that and you'll never need to worry about your position here. I'm not asking for protection, I answered. I'm asking for trust. You have it, he said too quickly. Maybe he believed it when he said it. Maybe he just needed someone to say yes while everything burned. Over the following weeks, I interviewed everyone whose name appeared in error reports. Developers who said, no one's touched this code in 3 years. We're afraid to break it. Account managers who admitted, clients only stay because switching costs more than tolerating us. Finance staff who confessed, these reports are incorrect every month. We fix them manually before distribution. Compliance officers who warned, we're one audit away from regulatory action. One executive pulled me aside. People here protect their territory, Amelia. Be careful how fast you move. I moved anyway. Late nights. Early mornings. Weekends that blurred into Monday without clear boundaries. I didn't just repair bugs. I dismantled and reconstructed the entire foundation they'd been standing on. Crestmont had 6 critical operational systems. Client onboarding, inventory tracking, demand forecasting, compliance monitoring, vendor coordination, and executive reporting. All stitched together with custom scripts and fragile connections that failed constantly. I started with the worst problem, demand forecasting. Every week, operations would generate predictions that were wrong by margins large enough to cost real money. Overstocked inventory. Understocked essentials. Client commitments that couldn't be met. This forecast is wrong again, Elena from operations said one afternoon, standing behind my chair as the system processed. If we order based on this, we'll be short on 3 major accounts. Give me 15 minutes, I said without turning around. You said that yesterday, she snapped. Yesterday was a different problem, I replied. This is a different failure point. He stared, then sighed. I don't know why you stay, honestly. Because if I leave now, you'll all be unemployed in 2 months, I answered. And I'm not done yet. The first month I wasn't improving anything. I was preventing immediate collapse. The second month I started eliminating problems at their source. Rewriting processes. Removing duplicated logic. Automating checks that had previously depended on someone remembering to do them manually. One night around midnight, a developer named Colin leaned over my shoulder and squinted at the code on my screen. "No one's ever touched this layer before," he said. "The last architect said it was too complex, too risky." "That's why it keeps failing," I answered. "Everyone built on top of it, hoping the foundation wouldn't crack." "You're rewriting the entire thing?" "Yes." "Are you sure that's wise?" "No," I said. "But it's necessary." Word spread faster than I anticipated. Clients stopped filing complaints about recurring issues. Support tickets that had appeared weekly vanished. Processing times decreased. Audit flags that had been constant background noise went quiet. Andrew started visiting my area more frequently. He never asked how the systems worked. He didn't want technical explanations. He asked what it meant for the company. "Clients seem calmer," he said one evening, leaning against the partition like he'd stopped by casually. "What changed?" "I made operations cheaper to run and harder to break," I answered. He nodded like he understood completely. "That's exactly what I hired you for." It wasn't exactly. He'd hired me because no one else would touch his failing company for what he was offering. I'd accepted because I knew if I succeeded, I'd never have to justify my value with credentials again. The first major client to renew called me directly. "I don't know what you did, Amelia," he said. "But the error stopped. The forecasts actually match reality now. I want you personally involved in every strategic discussion from now on." After that, the requests multiplied. "Can Amelia review this before we finalize? Is Amelia available for this presentation? I don't trust these projections unless Amelia confirms them." In meetings, people stopped looking at the executive table when they had questions about operations or risk. They looked at me. During one quarterly review, Elena half-joked, "If Amelia leaves, we're finished." The room went silent for a beat too long. The financial trajectory changed next. Losses flattened, then reversed. Clients who'd been threatening litigation renewed with improved terms. Referrals arrived from companies that had previously been one email away from terminating their contracts. Crestmont went from continuity risk in private conversations to turnaround success in industry articles. Andrew clapped me on the shoulder one morning as I passed him in the hallway. "You're making me look very smart," he said with that polished smile he used on investors. "I'm making the operations stable," I replied. He laughed. "Same thing." It wasn't. What I was doing was measurable, verifiable, concrete. What he was doing was taking credit for the part that didn't require waking up at 2:47 in the morning to fix a failed integration while pretending everything was under control. As our record profit projections solidified, something shifted in the building. Authority moved quietly at first. People in operations trusted my decisions more than executive memos. Managers consulted me before approving timelines that touched core systems. Several executives started inviting me into meetings I wasn't officially listed for, just to verify the operational side made sense. Every fix made the company stronger. It also made me more dangerous to anyone whose influence depended on title rather than competence. That's when Dylan started appearing. He showed up at his first strategy meeting without introduction. Late 20s, expensive haircut, suit that fit too perfectly to be off the rack. He sat beside his father at the head of the table like he'd always belonged there. "We need to think beyond operations," Dylan said, tapping a leather notebook with one hand. "This is about vision, not just systems maintenance." I glanced at the slide on the screen. It was my process map with my name removed from the bottom. "Which part of the operational framework are you referring to?" I asked. He hesitated for half a second, then recovered. "The overall strategy. We can't get trapped in maintenance mode forever. That framework is what's keeping our largest client compliant right now," I said. "If you want changes, we need specifics, not abstractions." His eyes flicked to his father. Andrew cleared his throat. "Amelia, let's not get too deep into details right now. We're discussing direction." That word, direction, started replacing concrete answers. In the following weeks, my calendar began changing. Meetings I used to lead were rescheduled without me. Some of my regular check-ins were postponed indefinitely. Decisions that affected core operations arrived in my inbox as FYI after they'd been made. During one planning session, I pointed at the timeline displayed on the screen. This schedule ignores the testing window. You're deploying a critical change 2 days before a major client audit. We'll adapt as we go, Dylan said, waving a hand. We can't move slowly anymore. That's how outages happen, I replied. And how clients end up explaining failures to regulators. Let's stay flexible, Andrew cut in smoothly. We can't paralyze ourselves with hypotheticals at every turn. After that meeting, I walked past the conference room as it emptied. I heard my name before I saw who was speaking. She's very capable, Andrew was saying. And yeah, she's good, Dylan corrected quietly. But she's operational. Investors don't care about process maps. Exactly, Andrew replied. We need someone who can project confidence. Amelia's done her part. Now we need leadership. I stepped away before they noticed me. Later that day, Elena stopped by my desk and lowered her voice. You're not on the next executive review agenda, she said. They removed your name. I wasn't informed, I said. She shook her head. Between us, this doesn't feel accidental. Dylan started presenting my work in meetings I was no longer invited to. He'd stand in front of slides I'd built and skip every detail that mattered, reducing months of operational restructuring into phrases investors liked hearing. Operational efficiency, he said once, gesturing vaguely at a chart I knew by heart. That's the key takeaway. Afterward, he passed by my desk. You should be proud, he said. None of this would exist without you. It wouldn't function without me either, I replied. He smiled politely. That's not how leadership works. That was when I stopped expecting fairness and started paying closer attention to control. I'd built the systems. I'd built the integrations. I'd built the automated processes. But whose name was on the ownership documentation? Whose company technically controlled the intellectual property? Right. Because from day one I hadn't agreed to become just an employee. I'd insisted on structuring the arrangement in a way that protected both parties. Crestmont got the operational framework it needed without purchasing something off the shelf that wouldn't fit. And I got to build it through my own company, Warren Systems, under a licensing agreement. It had been one of the few points in the original negotiation where Andrew pushed back. We could just make you a senior executive, he'd said during that first meeting in his Harborview office. That would be simpler. Simpler for you, I replied. Riskier for me. As a vendor, I control delivery, updates, and architecture. You get a solution that works. I get a business, not just a position. He'd weighed the options, reviewed the numbers, and eventually agreed. Fine, he said at the time. As long as we maintain control over timelines and budget. You'll have control over scope, I answered. Under one condition. We include an exit clause and protections for both parties. He'd waved a hand. Legal will handle it. Legal did. And because I'd been burned before at other companies, I read every single line of what they drafted. Then I rewrote several sections. By the time we signed, the agreement between Crestmont Solutions and Warren Systems contained 3 provisions that mattered more than everything else, even though no one in the building ever discussed them. The operational framework I built remained the intellectual property of Warren Systems. Crestmont had a non-transferable, non-sublicensable license to use it as long as they maintained an active support and maintenance contract with Warren Systems and did not attempt to reverse engineer or recreate core components. Either party could terminate with 90 days notice, but there was a specific clause about unilateral changes to my role or authority over the system. That clause sat quietly in Appendix C, Section 3.7. In the event that Crestmont Solutions materially alters Warren Systems' designated operational oversight, or replaces Warren Systems' appointed lead architect with another internal or external party without mutual written agreement, Warren Systems reserves the right to terminate the license with immediate effect, or b. transition the license to limited read-only mode for a period not to exceed 30 days, after which full access will be disabled unless a remediation agreement is signed. No one on their side mentioned it again. It was signed, filed, forgotten by everyone except me. So when Andrew handed me $100 bill and said, "This represents what your contribution is actually worth," it wasn't just insulting. It was clarifying. It told me exactly how he saw me. Temporary help that had outlived its usefulness now that Dylan had a success story to stand on. Told me something else too. The conditions for Section 3.7 had just been satisfied in the most public way possible. I went home that night not defeated, but awake in a way I hadn't been in months. I didn't sleep. I made coffee instead, opened my laptop and logged into systems that did not belong to Crestmont, but to Warren Systems. I reviewed the contracts I'd signed months earlier and kept secured copies of agreements no one in their building had bothered to read carefully because they thought the important parts were the price and the term length. The licensing server that validated Crestmont's access to the framework. Warren Systems. The support accounts linked to the automation tasks that processed their data every night, reconciled it and generated reports. Warren Systems. The deployment keys used to roll out new releases and security patches. Warren Systems. Every critical function of their operational infrastructure depended on four things. A license token that renewed every 30 days. A support contract flag that indicated active status, an operational oversight flag tied to lead architect Amelia Warren, and an automated compliance job that checked all three before allowing processing to continue. I hadn't built those protections to hold them hostage. I'd built them to ensure quality, to prevent them from bypassing proper procedures, to stop them from bringing in a discount vendor who'd promise everything and deliver nothing. The irony was that the only person who'd ever taken those protections seriously was me. At 1:18 in the morning, I opened the control panel for Crestmont's instance. The status showed: license, active renewal, 8 days support, active contract term end, 10 months operational oversight. Warren Systems lead architect Amelia Warren. Below that, 3 configuration options were grayed out for normal users. Not for me. Change oversight status. Initiate read-only transition. Terminate license. I didn't select terminate. This wasn't about destruction. It was about definition. At 1:23 in the morning, I clicked change oversight status. A prompt appeared. Crestmont has announced replacement of Warren Systems designated operational lead without prior mutual agreement. Do you wish to initiate read-only transition? Recommended. Maintain full access. Warning. Waiver of Section 3.7. Cancel. I selected initiate read-only transition. Another prompt. Transition window. 24 to 72 hours. Select duration before read-only mode begins. I chose 24 hours. Not because I wanted maximum chaos. Because I wanted clarity. Because if there was any part of them that understood what they'd done, this would give them 1 day to acknowledge it. A final prompt appeared. Confirm. Crestmont's license will automatically move to read-only at 9 o'clock tomorrow in Crestmont's local time unless a remediation agreement is executed. I clicked confirm. That was it. I didn't delete their data. I didn't deploy a malicious patch. I didn't change a single line of code inside their systems. I simply stopped telling my framework that it still had a reason to trust theirs. At 9:07 the next morning my phone buzzed. Unknown number at first glance. Familiar pattern. Andrew's direct line. I let it ring twice, then answered. Amelia, he said, breathless like he'd sprinted to the phone. We have a situation. I'm aware, I said. The system isn't responding. Operations are frozen. Forecasts aren't generating. Clients are calling non-stop. What did you do? It's responding, I replied. Just not the way you're accustomed to. What does that mean? He snapped. It means your license transitioned to read-only mode at 9, I said. Exactly as specified in Appendix C, Section 3.7 of our agreement. That clause was about sabotage, he barked. About if some external party tried to. That clause was about unilateral changes to my operational authority, I said. Yesterday you publicly announced you were replacing me with your son without discussion, without amendment, without mutual agreement. That triggered the clause. You can't just shut us down, he said. I didn't shut anything down, I replied evenly. The framework is still operational. Your data is intact. You can read everything. You just can't write. No new forecasts, no new reconciliations, no updated reports, no overnight processing. In other words, nothing that lets you pretend you still control the engine. I heard a muffled voice in the background. Dylan says the team is working on a workaround, he said. We'll have it restored without you. Which team? I asked. Silence. The developers who actually understood the framework don't work for Crestmont, I said. They work for Warren Systems. For me. And every one of their contracts is tied to the same support flag that just changed status. You didn't think this through, I said. You assumed I needed you more than you needed me. You're doing this out of spite, Dylan's voice cut in as he grabbed the phone. You're sabotaging the company because you're bitter. I'm doing exactly what your father signed off on, I replied. Because he assumed I'd never enforce it. He assumed I'd never actually use the protections we agreed to. We'll replace you, Dylan said. We'll rebuild what you did from scratch if we have to. You've been trying since 9, I said. How is that going? He swore under his breath. I heard chairs moving, someone whispering, the board is calling in. By noon, the first major client sent an email to my personal inbox. Not to Crestmont. Amelia, our dashboards are locked. If you've left Crestmont, we want to talk. We don't care whose name is on the building. We care who keeps our operations under control. Another message followed. Then another. Different variations of the same message. If Amelia isn't involved, we're not staying. Andrew called again at 12:42. Amelia, he said, voice lower now. We need to meet. I'm not on your payroll, I replied. We don't meet. We negotiate. Then negotiate, he said. This afternoon. Boardroom B. 3 o'clock. I let a beat pass. Fine, I said. I'll be there. But understand something. What? I'm not coming to fix your problem, I said. I'm coming to explain your options. Whether you like any of them is up to you. At 3 exactly, I walked into Boardroom B. Andrew was already there. Dylan too, pacing near the far wall like a caged animal in designer clothing. 2 board members sat rigidly at the table. A speakerphone glowed in the center. Someone important on the line listening. I didn't sit immediately. I took the $100 bill from my wallet and placed it in the center of the table. The same bill. The same fold. The same insult transformed. What's that? Dylan demanded. I looked at him. You remember it? Your father called it my actual worth. Andrew's face tightened. This isn't productive, Amelia. It's perfectly productive, I said. Because this, I tapped the bill, is what you thought you were buying. A woman who'd save your company and then gratefully accept whatever value you assigned her. Dylan leaned forward. Cut the theatrics. What do you want? I already have what I want, I said. Control over my work. Control over my company. Control over whether your systems keep functioning or slowly turn into a very expensive set of read-only screens. The board member on the phone spoke for the first time. Ms. Warren, she said, voice crisp through the speaker. You're making this sound like extortion. No, I replied. Extortion is threatening to reveal something that should stay hidden. I'm enforcing terms you already disclosed to your auditors and legal department. The only secret here is how little attention anyone paid to their own documentation. Andrew exhaled. What are our options? I sat down. Finally. Option 1, I said. You keep the current structure. Dylan remains in charge. You treat this like a temporary outage and rely on your reputation to keep clients patient. And, the CEO asked. And nothing changes on my end, I said. The framework stays in read-only mode. In 30 days, the license terminates automatically. Your data stays yours, but the engine that processes it all stops. You're free to rebuild everything from scratch with a new vendor. That's insane, Dylan snapped. We'd hemorrhage clients before we finished a requirements document. Correct, I said. Now you understand why I told you earlier that leadership isn't interchangeable. The board member in the room shifted. Option 2, she asked. Option 2, I continued. You formally acknowledge what already exists in practice. Crestmont's core operational framework remains licensed from Warren Systems. Authority over that framework stays with me or my designated lead. That condition is written into any future change of control. You stop pretending you can swap me out like furniture. Dylan's jaw clenched. You want to run the company? No, I said. I have no interest in your title or your office. I don't attend investor meetings. I don't present quarterly narratives. I run the system that keeps this place from collapsing. You can call me chief architect, consultant, external operations director. I don't care. What I care about is contractual control over the thing I built. That's it. The board member on the phone asked, "That's it? No equity? No demand for additional compensation?" "Oh, there will be compensation," I said. "Crestmont underpaid for what it received this year." "That's not my opinion. That's your balance sheet talking." Andrew frowned. "Specifics." "First," I said, "you sign a new 5-year licensing and operational agreement with Warren Systems at market rate. You know that rate now. You're not the desperate company anymore. Second, you issue a public correction to the internal announcement. Dylan is not replacing me. If you want to give him a position, create a strategy role that doesn't touch operations. He can present slides. He just can't touch the engine." Dylan started to protest. His father held up a hand. "Third," I continued, "you will never again tell anyone that my value is $100. That wasn't formal," the CEO muttered. "It was a gesture." "That's the point," I said. "That gesture told me everything I needed to know about how you think. So here's the formal part. Any future change to my operational authority requires my written consent. Not just legal's. Mine." Silence stretched. Dylan pointed at the bill between us. "And if we refuse?" he asked. "Then that 100 becomes a souvenir," I said. "The last petty insult you got away with before your company spent the next 18 months trying to replicate something you never understood." The board member on the phone spoke again. "How long would a rebuild take without you?" 20 months, I said. "Minimum. With an extremely talented team, unlimited budget and full cooperation from every client." "And with you?" she asked. I didn't smile. "The framework will be fully operational again 30 minutes after I see signed agreements." Andrew closed his eyes for a moment. "You're asking us to admit we made a mistake," he said. "I'm asking you to accept reality," I replied. "You can put whatever story you want on the press release. Call it a strategic partnership. Call it a recommitment to operational excellence. Lie to whoever you want. Just stop lying to yourself about who makes this place run." The boardroom was very quiet. Finally, the board member in the room, a woman I'd only ever seen in annual reports, reached for the bill on the table. She slid it toward Andrew. "I suggest we pay what this is actually worth," she said. "Before the market discovers how much of our success depended on a woman we tried to pay with pocket change." They signed within the hour. Legal sent over a new agreement. 5 years. Non-interference clause in bold. License fees adjusted upward to reflect actual dependence on the framework. Warren Systems would handle all architectural decisions. Crestmont could veto, but only with a documented risk acceptance that their board had to sign, not just an executive who wanted prettier narratives. They issued a new internal announcement the next day. It was brief. Effective immediately, Crestmont Solutions is entering into a long-term strategic technology partnership with Warren Systems under the continued leadership of Chief Architect Amelia Warren. Dylan Briggs will transition to a strategic initiatives role focusing on non-operational projects. No apologies. No confession. Just a correction that everyone understood. The operations team started sending messages. "Glad you're still here," Colin wrote. "Thought we were done when you walked out," Elena added. I didn't respond to most of them. Not because I didn't appreciate it. Because this stopped being about appreciation the moment a man threw $100 at me like a tip. Months passed. The company stabilized again, this time on a foundation that was contractually tied to reality. Clients became less nervous not because of speeches, but because their systems worked every day without requiring my name in every email. Andrew became quieter. He still held the title, still made the rounds, still took the calls, but he no longer used the word temporary when talking about people like me. Dylan lasted another quarter in his strategic initiatives role before quietly resigning to explore opportunities. None of our clients followed him. None of our analysts did either. One afternoon, Andrew came down to my floor. No cameras. No audience. Just him and the hum of the server room behind glass. "You could have left and let it burn," he said. "I did leave," I replied. "You just didn't realize what I'd taken with me." "And what was that?" he asked. I looked at the dashboards on the wall. Risk indicators. Uptime graphs. Client stability ratings. "Your illusion," I said. "That you were doing me a favor by keeping me around." He nodded slowly. "Older now. Smaller somehow. I was wrong about your value, he said quietly. I know, I answered. The difference now is that what you think doesn't determine it. He didn't argue. Later that night I took the $100 bill out of my wallet. I didn't need it as proof anymore. The contracts, the systems, the calls from clients who refused to move forward without me. That was the proof. I framed the bill and hung it above my desk at home. Not as a trophy. As a reminder. A reminder that whatever number someone tries to assign you in a moment of arrogance or dismissal is not your value. Your value is in the leverage you build quietly over years. In the systems no one else understands. In the clients who ask for you by name. In the contracts you read when everyone else stops at the signature line. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Don't confuse silence with weakness. Don't mistake doing the real work for having no power. The person who keeps the operations running, the systems functioning, the clients loyal. That person is never just technical. Titles can be handed out. Respect cannot. And the next time someone smiles, hands you a small bill and tells you that's your actual worth, smile, take it, walk away if you need to. Then make sure that when they come in the next morning and try to run the